Have you ever felt exhausted by social obligations that no longer serve you? At 65, I made a radical decision. I choose who gets my energy, and it's been the most liberating choice of my life. Years of people-pleasing, endless small talk, and draining interactions taught me a powerful lesson. Your peace is more important than proving your availability. This isn't about isolation. It's about intentional connection. In the next few minutes, I'll share how I transformed my social life from a cluttered landscape of meaningless interactions to a carefully curated garden of genuine, nurturing relationships. If you're tired of feeling obligated, overwhelmed, and emotionally drained, stay with me. I'm about to reveal the unexpected freedom that comes from being unapologetically selective about your social circle. Life has a funny way of teaching us lessons, sometimes through whispers and sometimes through thunderous revelations. At 65, I've learned that the most profound wisdom often comes from knowing exactly what to let go. Social interactions used to be my default setting. I was that person who couldn't say no, who showed up to every family gathering, neighborhood barbecue, and community event. I smiled, nodded, and small-talked my way through decades of obligations, believing that being constantly available was a virtue. But here's a truth that might sound radical. It wasn't. Years of people-pleasing had slowly drained my spirit, like a constant low-grade fever that you don't immediately recognize. Each meaningless conversation, each forced smile, each polite laugh took a piece of my authentic self. I was performing a role, the perpetually available, always willing friend, relative, and community member, without realizing the enormous emotional tax I was paying. Then came the turning point, a moment of crystal clear clarity that changed everything. I realized that my energy was not an infinite resource to be carelessly distributed. It was precious, limited, and deserved to be invested, not spent frivolously. Imagine social interactions like a bank account of emotional currency. Every meaningless conversation is a withdrawal, and genuine, deep connections are deposits. For years, I was experiencing massive overdrafts, and my emotional balance was critically low. This isn't about becoming a hermit or rejecting human connection. This is about being intentional, about understanding that your peace is more valuable than maintaining superficial relationships, about recognizing that it's okay, no, it's essential, to be selective about who gets access to your most valuable resource, your energy. The journey to my current state of social intentionality wasn't overnight. It was a gradual accumulation of experiences, disappointments, and subtle realizations that built up over decades. Let me take you back to understand the landscape of my social exhaustion. As a younger man, I prided myself on being the ultimate connector. My social calendar was always full. Birthdays, work events, neighborhood gatherings, you name it, I was there. I believed that being socially active was synonymous with being successful, kind, and engaged with life. Society had programmed me to think that constant social interaction was the ultimate measure of personal worth. But beneath the surface, something was brewing. Each interaction began to feel more like a performance than a genuine connection. I found myself rehearsing small talk in my head before events, preparing generic responses that would keep conversations smooth and superficial. The energy required to maintain these interactions was immense, and slowly, imperceptibly, I was burning out. My professional life didn't help. Decades in corporate environments had trained me to be perpetually available, to network, to always be on. Saying no was seen as career suicide. Every meeting, every after-work drinks, every team-building event felt like another layer of emotional makeup I was forced to wear. Family dynamics added another complex layer. As the reliable uncle, brother, and later family patriarch, I was expected to be present at every gathering, to mediate conflicts, to be the emotional anchor. While I loved my family, these expectations came with an unspoken emotional labor that was increasingly difficult to sustain. The turning point came gradually. It wasn't a single dramatic moment, but a series of subtle realizations. I started noticing how exhausted I felt after social interactions, how some conversations left me feeling more depleted than enriched, how the performative nature of most social engagements was consuming my inner peace. Retirement, paradoxically, didn't reduce these social pressures. If anything, it amplified them. Suddenly, people assumed I had endless time, that my calendar was completely open. Invitations multiplied, expectations grew, and my sense of personal boundaries began to erode. I realized that my social fatigue wasn't just about introversion or age. It was about the quality of interactions, the depth of connections, and the authentic exchange of energy. I was tired of surface-level conversations, of maintaining relationships out of obligation, of spreading myself so thin that I was becoming transparent. This wasn't depression or antisocial behavior. This was a profound awakening to the value of my own time, energy, and emotional bandwidth. I was learning that self-preservation isn't selfishness. It's a necessary act of self-respect. The moment of transformation arrived unexpectedly, like most profound life changes do. It wasn't dramatic or cinematic, just a quiet, crystal-clear realization that would reshape everything. I was sitting at a family reunion, surrounded by distant relatives and acquaintances, mechanically nodding and smiling. Suddenly, I felt an overwhelming sense of disconnection, not loneliness, but a profound understanding that I was physically present, yet emotionally absent. Each conversation felt like a performance, each smile a rehearsed act. A young nephew was talking about his career, and I realized I hadn't heard a single word. My mind was elsewhere, calculating the emotional energy this interaction was draining from me. That's when the revelation hit. I had been living on autopilot, sacrificing my inner peace for social expectations. The Buddhist concept of mindfulness suddenly made sense. It wasn't about completely withdrawing from society, but about being intentional, present, and true to oneself. I understood that my energy was a finite resource, and I had been spending it recklessly, like a bank account with unlimited overdrafts. This turning point wasn't about rejection. It was about recalibration. About understanding that true connection isn't measured by quantity, but by quality. I didn't need to attend every event, respond to every invitation, or maintain relationships that no longer served my personal growth. The decision wasn't easy. Society had conditioned me to believe that saying no was selfish, that being available was a virtue. But I was learning that setting boundaries was an act of self-love, not rejection. I began making conscious choices. Some friends and family members didn't understand initially. They saw my new approach as distant or cold. But for the first time in decades, I wasn't seeking external validation. My peace was more important than their perception. This transformation wasn't about becoming a hermit. It was about creating space for meaningful connections, about being selective, intentional, and true to myself. I was rediscovering the power of quality over quantity, of depth over breadth. The journey wasn't linear. There were moments of doubt, societal pressure, and internal conflict. But with each intentional choice, I felt more aligned, more authentic, more alive. I was learning that life isn't about pleasing everyone. It's about honoring yourself, protecting your energy, and cultivating relationships that genuinely nourish your soul. Implementing intentional social interactions requires more than just good intentions. It demands practical strategies, self-awareness, and a radical commitment to personal well-being. The first strategy is radical honesty with yourself and others. This means acknowledging your limits, understanding your energy patterns, and being transparent about your social boundaries. No more polite excuses or white lies. Just genuine, compassionate communication. I developed a personal, social currency assessment. Before committing to any interaction, I ask myself, will this conversation enrich my life? Does it align with my current emotional and mental state? If the answer is no, I respectfully decline. Creating a personal relationship audit became crucial. I categorized my connections into 3 levels: essential, occasional, and optional. Essential relationships include immediate family and close friends who genuinely support and understand me. Occasional connections are those I maintain with minimum energy investment. Optional relationships are those I can gracefully let go. Communication became key. I learned to express my boundaries clearly and kindly. I appreciate the invitation, but I'm currently focusing on my personal well-being, replaced my previous automatic yes responses. This wasn't about rejection, but about self-preservation. Mindfulness practices played a significant role. Daily meditation, journaling, and reflection helped me understand my social triggers and energy patterns. I learned to recognize when I was acting out of habit versus genuine desire. I also developed a social detox routine. Regular periods of solitude, nature walks, and creative pursuits became my emotional reset button. These weren't acts of isolation, but intentional moments of self-connection and renewal. Learning to say no without guilt was perhaps the most transformative skill. I realized that every no to an unfulfilling interaction was a yes to my inner peace. Each boundary I set was an act of self-respect, not a rejection of others. Group dynamics required careful navigation. I learned to be present without being perpetually available. At family gatherings, I would participate meaningfully but set clear time limits. Quality over quantity became my mantra. Emotional intelligence became my greatest tool. Understanding my own needs, recognizing my limits, and communicating them compassionately transformed my social landscape. I wasn't withdrawing, I was curating. These strategies weren't about becoming antisocial. They were about becoming authentically social. About creating space for connections that truly matter, relationships that inspire, uplift, and genuinely connect. The transformation wasn't just external. The most profound changes happened internally, in the quiet spaces of my mind and heart. As I became more intentional about my social interactions, a remarkable shift occurred in my emotional landscape. Peace became my new currency. Not the passive peace of withdrawal, but an active, vibrant state of inner calm. Each intentional choice created a ripple effect of mental clarity. I discovered that social exhaustion had been a constant background noise I'd grown accustomed to, and now that noise was silenced. My stress levels dramatically decreased. No longer constantly preparing for the next social performance, my nervous system found a new rhythm. Cortisol levels dropped, sleep improved, and I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in decades. It was as if I'd been carrying a heavy backpack for years and suddenly set it down. Emotional bandwidth expanded exponentially. By protecting my energy, I became more present in the interactions that truly mattered. Conversations with my closest family members deepened. I listened more intently, spoke more meaningfully. Quality replaced quantity in every sense. The Buddhist concept of mindful living took root. I learned that true connection isn't about constant interaction, but about being fully present in each moment. My meditation practice deepened, revealing layers of inner peace I hadn't known existed. Creativity flourished in the space I'd created. Without constant social obligations, I rediscovered forgotten passions. Writing, painting, gardening, activities that had been pushed to the margins of my life now took center stage. My mind, no longer constantly processing social expectations, found room to breathe and create. Self-compassion became my greatest ally. I stopped apologizing for my need for solitude, for my carefully curated social interactions. I recognized that my well-being wasn't selfish, it was necessary. Each boundary I set was an act of self-love, not rejection. Mental clarity emerged as an unexpected gift. My thoughts became more organized, my decision-making more intentional. The mental fog of constant social overstimulation lifted, revealing a sharper, more authentic version of myself. Interestingly, my relationships improved. By being selective, I became more fully present. Those who remained in my inner circle experienced a more genuine, engaged version of me. Quality connections replaced superficial networks. This wasn't about isolation, it was about liberation. liberation from societal expectations, from the exhausting performance of constant availability. I was reclaiming my life, one intentional interaction at a time. The emotional and mental benefits weren't just personal. They rippled outward, affecting every aspect of my life. I had discovered a profound truth. True connection begins with connection to oneself. Stories have power. They transform abstract concepts into lived experiences. Let me share 3 pivotal moments that exemplify my journey of intentional social connection. First, there was the annual neighborhood block party. For decades, I'd attend out of obligation, forcing small talk and collecting meaningless interactions like unwanted souvenirs. Last year, I made a different choice. I sent a warm, honest message explaining that I was focusing on personal well-being. Instead of attending, I spent the evening painting, a passion I'd neglected for years. The world didn't collapse. My relationships didn't crumble. Then came my daughter's wedding. Traditionally, I would have been everywhere, managing every detail, exhausting myself to meet everyone's expectations. This time, I chose differently. I focused on meaningful moments, a deep conversation with my daughter, a heartfelt dance with my wife, genuine connections with close family members. I was fully present, not spread thin. A particularly transformative experience happened during a family reunion. My extended family was surprised by my new approach. Where I once would have circulated endlessly, making sure everyone felt my presence, I now chose strategic, meaningful interactions. I had 3 profound conversations instead of 20 superficial ones. These weren't acts of withdrawal, but acts of intentional engagement. Each interaction became a conscious choice, not an automatic response. I discovered that by being selective, I became more valuable in my connections, not less. My closest relationships deepened. My children noticed a change. I was more present, more authentic. Friends who truly understood me appreciated the honesty of my approach. These real-life examples weren't about reducing social interactions, but about elevating them. Quality replaced quantity, depth replaced breadth, authenticity replaced performance. The magic wasn't in avoiding people. The magic was in choosing connections that truly mattered. I know what you're thinking. Isn't this approach just a sophisticated form of isolation? Won't you end up alone? Let's address these concerns head-on. Loneliness is not the absence of people. It's the absence of meaningful connection. My approach isn't about pushing people away. It's about pulling the right people closer. Quality over quantity isn't just a catchphrase, it's a lifeline. Many worry that being selective means becoming antisocial. But there's a profound difference between being antisocial and being intentional. I'm not rejecting human connection. I'm curating it. I'm creating space for relationships that truly nourish my soul. Society often mistakes constant availability with kindness, social engagement with personal worth. But true connection isn't about how many people know you. It's about how deeply those few truly understand you. Mental health professionals increasingly recognize the importance of social boundary setting. Chronic people-pleasing leads to burnout, anxiety, and emotional exhaustion. My approach is a form of self-care, not self-isolation. Technology offers incredible tools for maintaining meaningful connections. Video calls, messaging, carefully curated social media interactions. These aren't replacements for deep connection, but supplements to genuine relationships. For those worried about losing social skills, I offer this perspective. By being selective, I've become a more attentive, engaged communicator. Each interaction is intentional, present, meaningful. The fear of judgment is real. Society pressures us to be constantly available, constantly performing, but true courage is living authentically, not meeting external expectations. Remember, you are not responsible for managing everyone's emotions. You are responsible for your own well-being. This journey isn't about a prescription. It's an invitation. An invitation to reimagine your social life, to reclaim your energy, to choose connection over obligation. Start small. one boundary at a time. One intentional no that becomes a profound yes to yourself. Notice how it feels. Pay attention to the space that opens up. Ask yourself these transformative questions. Who truly nourishes my spirit? Which interactions leave me feeling energized? Where am I giving away my power through endless, meaningless engagements? Your social life is not a democracy where everyone gets a vote. It's your personal ecosystem, and you are the curator. This isn't about becoming a hermit. This is about becoming authentically you, about recognizing that your energy is sacred, your time is precious, and your well-being is non-negotiable. For those feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, trapped in endless social obligations, this is your permission slip. Permission to breathe, permission to choose, permission to live intentionally. Your most important relationship is the one you have with yourself. Protect it, nurture it, celebrate it. Life is not about pleasing everyone. It's about honoring yourself, protecting your energy, and creating space for genuine, transformative connections. Are you ready to reclaim your social life? Are you ready to live with intention? The choice is yours. If you found this content helpful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss future insights like this. See you in the next video.